Section 62 as amended to make recommendation to the DoD relating to the following: the annual improvements of salaries and service benefits of our members, the policies in respect of conditions of service, the promotion measures and setting of standards to ensure that effective and efficient implementation of our policies on conditions of service within the DoD are implemented. Within the operationalization of the Military Bargaining Council, the mandates of these two entities needs to be unpacked. As what SecDef already alluded to, Chair, last year we realized now that the Military Bargaining Council has to obviously be operationalized after SANDU has achieved the required threshold of 15,000. Obviously, meaning now that going forward, we cannot ignore SANDU on any discussion on service conditions of our members. Next slide. Since the last meeting, Chair, that we had on the 16th of August, 2021 with yourselves, there has been a number of interventions that has taken place to address the proposed recommendations by the Defense Force Service Commission. We had meetings after your one, the one that we presented here in September 2021. The Defense Force Service Commission was requested to consolidate the list of the 178 recommendations in terms of their fundings over that period of 2013 to 2020. This was the period when they started making recommendations. A formal response in this regard was submitted to the Defense Force Service Commission on the 2nd of November 2021 by ourselves, so that we can talk from the same hymn book going forward in terms of what is outstanding from our side. On the 8th of November 2021, the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans met with the Defense Force Service Commission and agreed on a strategic ministerial retreat to streamline the implementation of the recommendations and further unpack the mandate of the Defense Force Service Commission. In preparation for the retreat, Chair and members of the Joint Standing Committee, the following interventions has taken place from the department. On the 10th of December 2021, I personally met with the Defense Force Service Commission as instructed by the Minister to discuss the report reflecting the progress of the DoD on the recommendations that were tabled by themselves. At this meeting, we agreed that the Defense Force Service Commission will prepare a document to indicate, categorize, and prioritize recommendation into two separate groups. The first group reflects those ones that require additional funding for implementation, and therefore we believe that those one cannot be considered for implementation by the DoD as now because of the constraint that we are having in terms of the budget. The second one that we categorized were the one that we believe we can implement with as they don't require any additional funding, and feedback on the progress of this recommendation would be provided to the Defense Force Service Commission on terms and timelines agreed upon by ourselves. Subsequent to the same meetings that we already had this year in February on the 11th, we had another meeting with the Defense Force Service Commission to prepare for the retreat that is going to be chaired by the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans. In this meeting, we had members from the Minister's Office with Mr. Mutumi as a special advisor chairing the meeting on our behalf. We were supported by other structures in the DoD, including our labor relations people and legal people that were also included in the meeting. The intention, Chair, was also to look at this specific issue that we've spoken about in terms of the possible conflicting interests between the Defense Force Service Commission and the Military Bargaining Council, should there be any. And we wanted to prepare for that so that as we move forward, we all know what is the boundary management issues between the two entities. I can confirm it was one of the most difficult meetings that we ever had, because we were not able to find ourselves immediately on some of the discussion, as other entities believe that there is still a requirement, obviously, from the Defence Force Service Commission to continue, when others believe that with the Military Bargaining Council now being operationalized, there is no requirement for that. The Commission, together with the HR Division, will unpack and define tools of trades and conditions of service paradigms in order to establish a common understanding by all the role players going forward. This is the work that we believe is still in progress, so that at least we know now how to move forward. On the 10th of March, the Defence Force Service Commission submitted the reworked list of recommendations to the Office of the MOD and Military Veterans and CHR, myself, and subsequent to the intervention that took place in all the interactions between ourselves, the 178 recommendations that were made obviously came down to around 50. I can confirm it's actually 47 if I want to be precise, but we just said around 50. We then prioritize all these recommendations as what I indicated when I opened that, in terms of those that require funding and those that does not require funding by the SNDF. If we look at the current status, this is the one that showed the 178 as of what I indicated earlier on. On my left, on my screen, you'll see is the one that talks about a total of 93, and then the other one talks about 85. Those are the ones that we started categorizing in terms of their numbers, but it will talk to all the issues that we had to look at, from accommodation to allowances to border protection, command and control, all those issues that have been raised on the left-hand side. And the one that talks on the 85 talks to other tangible issues like your medical support services, your morale, occupation, health and safety, procurement, reserve forces, etc. Those are the categories that spoken to the 178. So we managed to find ourselves where they fall in. After we went through the entire process, as I indicated earlier, we came to the 47 that I said in precise 47. And you'll see now that we're saying the budget and procurement aspects in terms of recommendation now leads to 6. HR-related matters that talks about policies of HR that speak directly to conditions of service is 8. Then we talked about other conditions of service, uniform, medical support. We talked about 20, medical support services, cost of saving options. We talked about 2, tools of trades, which are the thing that we have to give to our members in terms of them being able to do the work. We talk of 4, which is 6, and the one that speak to morale was 1, and in total it was 47. These are the one now that we can confirm that they are on our books, and these are the one that we have to respond to the Service Commission in terms of how we progress on those issues. And we can confirm that this one has got no financial implication, and we are in the position to deal with it and respond accordingly to the Service Commission, Defense Service Commission. In conclusion, Chair, we do appreciate the opportunity to brief yourself. It should, however, be acknowledged that some of the recommendations, as we already indicated, require time for planning and implementation. They are not clear cut that we can believe that we can resolve some of them immediately. But yes, those that we believe are straightforward and we can resolve, we are already in the process of addressing them, and we should be in a position to respond to those ones that are clear cut and are easy within a short space of time. It is also critical, Chair, to mention that the mandate between the Defence Force Service Commission and the Military Bargaining Council have to be clarified. And we want to emphasize on it because if we don't clarify it, we will forever be in courts with SANDU already checking every single thing that goes with their role and responsibilities against the Defence Force Service Commission mandate. So we can confirm that even in the meeting that we had with the Defence Force Service Commission, we were aware this issue will be coming. So we don't want to be found wanting on this issue if this mandate is not clarified, and we don't also agree how to move forward. We will be dealing with these issues in the planned ministerial retreat, and we were honest in our meeting, the last meeting, that we have to be honest to ourselves when we're going to discuss these matters with the minister chairing this particular meeting. In closing, Chair, we can say the DoD commits to continuously improve the current relationship between ourselves and all the entities mandated to improve the service conditions of our soldiers. That means both the Military Bargaining Council and the Defence Force Service Commission. That, Chair, should be concluding my presentation. This is just the status, Chair, just to confirm that since our last engagement, there has been a number of interactions that has been taking place. And I know what has been presented to this Joint Standing Committee before was that there's no communication between us and the Service Commission, but we now want to confirm that there is communication and we're making progress in that regard. Okay. I think that should conclude the presentation, Chair, in terms of the update.
And thank you very much, Admiral. There's maybe please assist here how we got to where we have two bodies. I think you did not, touch on that. I'm talking two bodies, namely DFSC and what you call the Bargaining Council. There is history to it. I know the history. Can you just summarize it so that the colleagues are in the picture as to why two bodies? I know there was DFSC and there was a reason for that, but now we have the Bargaining Council after SANDU, the union, got registered as official representative of the workers in the Defence Force. Can you just talk to that in brief?
Thank you, Chair and members of the Joint Standing Committee of Defence. Chair, we're going to be open and honest on this issue because we raised it in the last meeting with the Service Commission as well, and they know why this issue of the threshold of SANDU came to this stage where we now have to have the Military Bargaining Council. If you go around, we found that since the establishment of the Defence Force Service Commission, there's not, despite the recommendation, Chair, and we appreciate the recommendation, there's not really been tangible conditions of service that has been approved that we believe that it has actually sent a good sign to men and women, obviously the DoD, that they have managed to talk on the behalf of the members. If Chair, you can also recall, there was even a stage where almost, and then I said this, and Master Mutumi will know what I said in the meeting, and said there was even some time when they were actually saying, because we have got the free medical and we don't entitle to get certain benefits from the DoD. So the moment you make those type of recommendation as somebody that everybody looks up to you to fight for their interests, whether you agree with them or not, and people pick it up, people lose confidence in you. And I think this issue became very, very clear as well. But the fact that also we never had anything that actually went through and passed by National Treasury that the DoD has been fighting for in terms of conditions of service of the members, people did not really see the reason of the existence of the Defence Force Service Commission. SANDU was more proactive. SANDU takes, Chair, every single case of our people, whether they're members of SANDU or not, and they litigate on behalf of our members. And most of the time, SANDU has been successful. And they've been successful because also as the leadership as well, we did not attend to the interests of our members. We also are also to be blamed on that issue. The career management issues for our members were not prioritized by the department, and SANDU managed to capitalize on that issue. So there's two issues. We as the leadership, we failed our people, and we have to acknowledge it, that we failed our people, and SANDU was there to say, come, we will deal with your grievances through the courts, etc., etc. And they were successful. So people see SANDU as the Messiah that can take anything. It does not matter whether these things really something that we don't agree and we don't want our members to benefit out of it. SANDU challenges, and every single case that SANDU wins, they get, people running to them. So we can confirm that that's the reason now why SANDU is having this stuff. And we can confirm even from the last presentation that we made, the number of SANDU is still increasing. So it does not reduce. It's not static. It still keep on increasing. And they have strategized this very well. So, Chair, I think that's basically why we are where we are currently. I think it's how smart SANDU is in terms of dealing with the issues of our members. I don't know if it addresses your concern, the question that you raised, Chair.
You have, Admiral. I thought you should come back on that one because in your presentation you flag a question that now that we have SANDU, the union, do we still need, I want to be blunt, do we still need the Defence Force Service Commission? And you've explained how we got to where we are now, where we have two bodies in existence. In fact, we thought the establishment or the creation of the Defence Force Service Commission will discourage members of the Defence Force it would make them would actually make members of the Defence Force see no need to take up a membership of any union. And but here we are now. Maybe we will have to look at that. And maybe in the discussion, the colleagues will also express a view on this issue. But before I let members come in, Minister, do you want to say anything before I open it up at this stage, or you'll come after the discussion?
Chair, can I come after the discussion?
Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our colleagues, the platform is now open. Mr. Mare, I see you. Any other colleagues, you know my handicap. Please just announce yourself.
Yeah, let's go with Ryder, please, Chair.
Or Mr. Ryder, and what else? So I only have those two at the moment. Okay, Mr. Mare, and then Mr. Ryder.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Thank you, Admiral Kubo, for your presentation. I just wanted to start off by, in terms of the question that you asked, Chairperson. As far as I can recall, the Defence Force Service Commission was put in place specifically because there was no a union active in the Defence Force, and there was no one that was big enough. So the threshold, I think, as the Admiral has mentioned, is 15,000. And obviously, the moment that any union has got 15,000 members, then they deserve recognition. So you are quite right to ask the question whether we must proceed with both the Military Bargaining Council and the Defence Force Service Commission. We've had many presentations in the past, and I think, as Admiral Kubo has said, that because the Defence Force Service Commission was a cost element and a cost factor, but there was not really enormous deliveries in terms of the satisfaction by members. And we know that the only clients that they've got is the members of the Defence Force. And also, one must really ask the question: if that is the case, then we must really consider it in the light of austerity measures and cost-cutting priorities that must be initiated. The minister has spoken about that, because what we do not have at this stage is what will be the cost of the Military Bargaining Council. And if you compare that to what the Defence Force Service Commission is costing us, and then even in this presentation there was indications of certain recommendations that where they might need more money, which is something that we do not have. So first of all, that whole matter about the recognition of unions. Then I also want to just ask whether SANDU is the only trade union or union of members that is recognized, or whether there are other unions. And then my biggest problem is the duplication between the Military Bargaining Council and the Defence Force Service Commission. And I mean, I think we owe it to the Defence Force and to the members that, you know, if we have got a duplicated structure that is only costing us money, that we will have to seriously reconsider that. I want to ask the question with regard to Reserve Force members, whether the Reserve Force members are included in this whole process, whether they have been consulted in the process. I know in the past we had the Reserve Force Council, which we know that the minister has not made a decision to either reinstate or reappoint or appoint members of the Reserve Force Council. So we don't know at this stage who is really representing the interest of Reserve Force members, because they are quite clearly different from regular force members and civilian members. So the needs are different, and I think their circumstances are different. But I don't pick up in the discussions and the presentations whether a provision has been made for them as well. So if we can just maybe,
can you clarify yourself whether they've been consulted in what?
In the whole process of the Military Bargaining Council, and because SANDU is
wait a minute. Let's come back to what we are discussing. We're discussing the implementation of the recommendations of the DFSC.
Yes, yes.
And
so even
we have not received a presentation on the establishment of the.
I realize that, but I also want to ask from the DFC and Admiral Kubu whether all these provisions for the DFC and what is recommended, whether it provides for Reserve Force as well. We know how often we rely on the Reserve Force, but we also know that they are maybe employed for half a year or sometimes even less, sometimes longer. But it's not a permanent position like a yearly occurrence. So for me, it's just important to see to what extent have we provided for them, and to what extent have they been consulted in the whole process.
So let me understand you, Mr. Murray. Are you trying to understand to what extent have the recommendations covered the Reserve Force as well? Because we're talking about the implementation of the recommendations.
Correct.
And okay, all right.
Correct.
No,
Because remember, we've got a one force policy, but we know that there's a huge difference between regular force and Reserve Force in terms of employment conditions and things like that.
Thank you.
In terms of, thank you.
Thank you so much. The question is clear now. Mr. Reda?
No, Chair, I think I don't want to labor the point. I've been well covered. Thank you.
You've been well covered. All right. Are there any questions, colleagues, that you don't want to silence you? All right. So those are the two questions, largely from Mr. Mare. Over to you, Chief.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the question from Honorable Mare. I can confirm currently it's only one military union that has got the threshold, and it's the only one that is sitting currently at the Military Bargaining Council. We don't have another one. So SANDU is the only military union we're having to respond to the first question. In terms of the second question, and I'm happy that Honorable Rice confirmed the one force concept. We are aware that in terms of some of the recommendation that has been made by the Defence Force Service Commission, the members of the reserves are there. So we have not separated the regular force members and the reserves. So all of them are included in the same recommendation that we have spoken about. So we're using the same one force concept in terms of attending to the issues raised by our members pertaining to the 178, which is now the 47 recommendation that has been made by the Service Commission. I can confirm that. Thank you, Chair.
But Chief, if someone asked me that you were in the meeting with the Chief HR, the SecDef, and the Minister when they were presenting on the implementation of the Defence Force Service Commission recommendations, what, how many recommendations, or how many of those recommendations have in fact been implemented? I will give them the number. And then if they ask further, what are those recommendations that have been implemented? And what are the recommendations that have not been implemented? And what is the reason why they have not been implemented? Does it mean that all those that have not been implemented, it is due to the fact that they are costly and there's no budget for it? Or is simple that the department is not willing to implement them? I will not be able to answer that question. You see, I'm raising this, Admiral, in the context of what was presented last year. I think it was in November, where it was reported that soldiers deployed on the borders under Operation Corona have no authority to intercept vehicles, have poor communications equipment, lack night vision equipment, and their bullet-resistant equipment is old and unserviceable. And yeah, so now it's very clear what they are recommending, and it's being said. And now I'm the chair of this commission, and people are complaining about the borders. And I get this information that, look, this is the state of affairs, or the extent to which our members are neglected, inverted commas. All right. And now, if I don't get information as to whether these matters have been addressed or not, what would I say? It's one thing to say statistics. I can even say 90% of the recommendations have been met. But if in the 10% you have recommendations that go right into the core of the problems, and those recommendations have not been implemented, and I would still say, yes, 93% statistically appears good, but until we have addressed the last 10%, will not see the difference. In other words, it will be as good as if we have not done anything. I'm not too sure if you get the point, Chief. We are now in this conversation, and I mean, they say they live in houses that have asbestos roof, this, that, and so on, and that speaks to their conditions of service. And I don't hear you saying anything. Maybe you would say we did not deal with that because it's expensive. We can't remove even a single asbestos sheet because there's no money. I don't hear you saying anything. And I'm the chair, and I will still walk out of this meeting none the wiser. That is my problem, Chief. I'm not too sure if you understand my dilemma in this case.
Thank you, Chair. I do understand your dilemma, Chair. I can confirm, Chair, that this is the reason why we were not being able to find ourselves with the Defence Force Service Commission. I'll give you some examples now. When you talk about accommodation, it's saying 16. If you look at them, they did not package it. I packaged it. I took all the 178, let's say, recommendations. But to find that 16 of those, it talks about dilapidation of the structures. So for me, I package it, but I talk about the number of times they reported on it, and it's 16 cases. Then, Chair, you'll understand now when we're talking about they talk about different units, we accept, but we all know we do have a challenge in terms of accommodations, etc., because they dilapidated. So we packed that one. We said, okay, fine, this one requires some funding, we accept it. So we have not resolved that as yet, because we do have the challenge. Then you go to the OSD, you find that they talk about so many numbers of people are complaining, different names or different units where they had the problem of the OSDs, but we now know that the OSDs has been resolved. The minister last year did sign all the OSD for the nurses, and then that part has been done and resolved, and we have packed it. The issues on the medical challenges that we are sitting, also we said it talks to the budget, so those has not been resolved as yet. So what we did, Chair, in agreement with them, we said, let's package them in that sense. And then if we package them in that sense, we cannot talk about 178 yet, because everything talks on the same issue. That's why we categorize them. If you talk accommodation, we know the problem. You talk about the accommodation. We all know. Don't worry about that unit and that structure, etc., etc. So we agreed that's how we're going to deal with it. And we now, with what we presented to you now today, in terms of how we categorize them, I think that's what we felt that's the way to go in consultation with them. Now the 5047 is now the one that now we're going back. But the OSDs, we can confirm all the OSD issues have been resolved. The caller for the deployment of external deployments has been resolved. The policy issues, some of them has been resolved, including also addressing the issues of the OSD. So we have ticked that. But maybe to address your specific, if we don't categorize in terms of facilities, infrastructure, etc., we can actually submit and say, out of this now, out of this category is no longer an issue for us. And I think we can submit it in that context. I hear what the chair is saying, and then I think we can do that for the benefit of the meeting, and we can submit it through yourself, Chair.
No, it's fine. Let's do that, Chief. Even if it means producing a plan to now, at least now you know that these are the different areas that you are dealing with, and for each area, okay. And you have produced a plan because you now know where these are in the country, and then go to a plan for number 2 or number 3 until the last plan. Obviously, that will be part of the same plan, one plan. So that at least we know that the department is alive to the issues and is doing something about them going forward. And the plan with clear timelines as to when you will have them dealt with. Because I agree, some of these issues, the money is there. and because they don't need a lot of money to deal with them. So that is the issue. In other words, I'm saying is when you come back to us, on to improve your report, just to indicate in a summary way by when you want to have some of these things done. And of course, that when it requires a lot of funding, you indicate that these will be not even in the long term because we don't have the budget to deal with them. So that's the issue and my concern in input, Mr. Moran.
Chairperson, if I can, thank you very much for the opportunity. If I can just touch on two issues that Admiral Kubo was not direct. The reserve force members, are they seen as temporary workers and as such, handled differently in terms of the act, or are they, as we have talked about the 1-4 situation, that even as temporary workers, are they fully catered for? Then, secondly, in terms of from your presentation, I think it was slide 9 and then slide 10. I want to come back to the cost and the duplications, because there you talk about recommendations, and certain recommendations are related to finances that is referred to the minister to make a decision. Whether you can, and if it's not possible tonight, if you can maybe send us how the cost structure of the Defence Force Service Commission will compare to that of the Military Bargaining Council. Because clearly we must consider these in the light where we are. And if we can deal with that, it'll be good. Then lastly, in terms of coming back to the reserve force, and sorry that I'm so focused or touched on the reserve force so often, but what structure does exist for you to make sure that you have incorporated all the concerns and issues of the reserve force members? Do you just work through them, the trade union? I don't know if they are members of SANDU, and whether you liaise with the Reserve Force Council. We know that we haven't got a chief at this stage, and we know that we haven't got a Reserve Force Council. So how do you make sure that you provide for all those members, because all of them are deployed all over the show? Thank you very much.
Right, that was the last comment on the issue, Chief and the SecDef.
Sure.
And I invite you to comment.
So maybe I can still come in
Yes,
to respond to Honorable concerns. The reserve force members, we don't regard them as temporary employees, because the management of temporary employees is slightly different, and temporary employees are almost like your contract workers, casual contract labor. And they are also people that you appoint in terms of a fixed term, which is not permanent to that, but the benefits are different when you appoint them in that regard. The reserve force members are appointed in terms of the Defence Act. They're entitled to every single benefit. The only thing that they don't get outside the allowances, etc., that every one of us who are in the regular force get, is just to contribute to the pension, because their period is within a certain call-up period, so they don't contribute to the pension. But all the facilities, they also are allowed to be members of the GLIS, which is a group life insurance of the DoD, and they benefit as we do. The exception is only on the pension, because their period is short and they don't contribute to pension. So we don't regard them as temporary employees. They part of the Defence Force, and we appoint them accordingly. Yes, technically one can say maybe they are, because they're not permanent like permanent. But if we all recall, we have changed the appointment processes of members of the military, where you've got the MSDSs that are appointed for 2 years, And you have got the core service system members that are appointed for a period of 5 years, some of them 10 years, some of them 20 years. So that process is also applicable to the DoD, because we use actually no longer people that are coming in the system and they retire at 60 years anymore. So we can safely say there is no permanent appointment as what we used to term permanent appointment, where you come and you leave at the age of 60. But yes, the people that has joined before in terms of integration, we're still managing them until the age of 60, but all the new appointees are not in that category anymore. So the reserve force, we put them in that category as well, like your MSDS, your CCS members, etc. But they don't just contribute to pension. In terms of how we managing them in terms of them being members of the union, it is difficult for us to check how many members of the reserve force belong to the union, because we only can use the PESOL to see. The threshold we're talking about is when we check on our system, because the contribution of the members of SANDU actually is being deducted from their salary. So it's easy for us to see and check that so many members at any given time are paying towards SANDU, which is their monthly contribution to SANDU, and it's easy to extrapolate that information. The reserve force members, they don't use that facility if they belong to SANDU. They will obviously use the bank, and that information is difficult for us to obtain. So when we're talking the 15,000 plus threshold, we're talking about the people that we can check through our own system to confirm that. If Chair, you can recall, there has always been dispute from SANDU to say the numbers that we always present, even before they reach the threshold, is not the correct figures. They actually have got more people. And we realize sometimes they use the members of the reserve force as well, or the people that probably has already left the system because they've not closed, their contribution, and they talk about those issues. But those are the issues that always we used to say to SANDU, then provide us with the details or the names, etc. So we can probably even today, maybe we might say that we don't have members of the reserve force belonging to SANDU, but we might find there are those. But one would ask the question and say, what are they going to benefit because they can't fight for the service benefits or even fight with us outside the only normal call-up. So if it's only the normal call-up, it will just be during that period, which can be a period of between 3 months, 6 months, and then they're not going to benefit again to use SANDU for that particular purpose. Unless if they had long outstanding grievances that they believe will benefit them financially, maybe they can still continue with SANDU for a good period of time for them to attend to whatever issues they had with us. But we can confirm it's definitely not going to be many that will obviously continue and be members of the union if they're not active members of the department. So yes, I don't want to dispute or to deny that they can be members of the reserve force, but I doubt if the numbers will be even closer to even 100 if they are. I hope that it attends to how do we deal with their issues. All the members of the reserve forces, if they've got issues during the period of their call-up, follow the normal grievance procedure of the department, which also is the highest body in the DoD that deals with the grievances of both uniform and regular force members and PSEP, which we chair on a monthly basis on behalf of the minister. And then that also get provided to SecDef and the chief of the SNDF for uniform members. So both SecDef and the chief of the SNDF look at all the grievances of our members on behalf of the minister. And that's where majority of the reserve force members put their grievances and they are addressed there. And they are also allowed to go via the military Ombud as well. So those structures are there for them. That's why I don't see, them going to SANDU and pay the subscription if these other forums that I'm talking about are free of charge for them. I hope it does attend to what Honorable Maria wanted to get from us. I submit, Chair.
Okay. All right. So we agreed that you will come back with a plan indicating what you intend doing in the short term, medium, and long term for each of those items. listed in the category or categorized.
I've made a big note, Chair, and we will attend to that.
And also the financial liability on both. Thank you.
And the financial liability as well. I'm sure we will cost each exercise. Okay.
Thank you.
No, it's fine. So we'll then end it at that with you, Chief. And the Secretary, do you have any comment to make before I release you?
Chairperson, thank you very much. I would just align myself in terms of what the Admiral had said, because even some of the things that need money, there are some of the things that we are engaging with. For instance, when you take at the issue of accommodation, infrastructure, and facilities, we are already in conversation with our colleagues in DPW. We did inform that we have a task team that we had set. In actual fact, even last week at the end of the week, I had a meeting requested by the colleagues from Treasury, where the main issue of discussion was the one around our facilities, but also around the issues of DPW. Remember that for them to actually manage our facilities on a yearly basis, they were getting a budget of about 1.2 billion. And the view of the Treasury is that we must then address those ones ourselves. Then, for instance, also the issue of border protection on Operation Corona. Then when you look at that, it's more about the tools of trade, which are being spoken about also under the same category of things that have been raised. And you also have just tools of trade that stand on their own. And then the issues of the deployments externally. So I am aligning myself with the Admiral in the sense that we'll come back, because if then the idea is that we focus 100% ourselves on some of these things, then we don't have to really be sharing the money with the DPW, but then to say, how do we actually address all those issues within ourselves? And that will be both. I think the progress would be largely maybe around those that need financial resources, but also to give you progress reports, even the ones that don't need financial resources, just to give you an indication of where we are at and what it is that we are doing, regardless of whether those recommendations need money or not, just to keep the committee appraised. But also, I think that we will still have to thrash out some of the issues between ourselves as a department, as well as the Defense Service Commission. And then we would also revert on those matters to the Joint Standing Committee Chair. So I would like to leave it at that. Thank you.
No, it's fine, Secretary. I think let's leave it at that, with the hope that when you will come back, you'll give us the information that you've just touched on. So I think we'll meet with you, maybe not in the next quarter, maybe in the...
I just see the minister's hand is up.
Oh, it's up. Okay. No, thank you so much. I'll then come back to the minister. We will come back on the 4th of August for 6 weeks, I think until September late. And then we go on recess again. Maybe we'll see with you towards the end of the year. I'm sure by then you would have packaged the information for us. We don't want to put you under pressure, because I know your hands are, you have a lot in your hands. All right, Minister.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Secretary. Minister.
Chair, thank you very much. I think, yes, I agree. Let us come back. Let us come back and make a very serious distinction between a member of the Defense Force and a member of the Reserve Forces, because there is quite a big distinction. And therefore, I think the confusion comes because a call-up is almost being reduced to, you have been on leave, come back to work, and you can go back on leave. That is not that at all. And therefore, I would like Admiral, for us to go back and to really go and interrogate the concept of a reserve force member. Definitely a reserve force member in any right-thinking union cannot be a member of that union, because the union is about shop floor issues. You will remember years ago when the concept of trade unionism in the military came up, most of us went into shock, because we thought of essential services, we thought of what if there is a war on and people are saying we demand a salary increase and so on and so on. And that is why at that point, even when reluctantly there was an opening and Minister Likota was the minister, then Terra Likota was the Minister of Defense, then he opened up the space. Because there was a slow uptake from the soldiers themselves, there was this compromise of setting up a structure that would, in the meantime, as the concept got accepted by both the civilian part of South Africa and the uniformed part of South Africa, the concept of a trade union in the military. So as soon as, if we are brutally honest, Chair, as soon as you have a union that is recognized, that does not just go to the Military Bargaining Council, but can actually enter the space of all the labor bargaining councils, you must then enable the trade union to take care of what it was formed to do. And therefore, in my mind, I don't think we should be going this way and that way. We must also say, Chairperson, that in the interim, perhaps there was some coyness sometimes of really taking forward what came out of the Service Commission, was that at some point there was also an overreach into areas of command and control. At least in my first meeting with the Service Commission, I picked that up. And I had issues with it, because you want to ensure that all the trade union related issues of soldiers are respected and carried out. But you also do not want any structure to go and begin to interfere in how commanders do their responsibility. So I think, yes, let's come back to you. But also, if we want to say that members of the reserve forces must have a situation where they did, I thought the Reserve Force Council was such a body that looked after their welfare. Otherwise, I do not understand why we have a Reserve Force Council if it is not to look into the issues of those who are reserve forces. They cannot be treated, Admiral Kulu, like members of a full-time trainer, because the conditions there are different. But then let us, as Admiral Kubu and SecDef, come back to educators. Maybe I will begin to understand. But for me, there is a contradiction in how we want to deal with these issues. You cannot, if you are going to look at the annual increase or any other issues that pertain to your rank and file, be looking at people who have retired as top officials, because now they are in the management category. So you make a distinction in a trade union between this people who are up there in the command structure, they are the management. So let us come back and recanvass this whole issue of trade unionism in the military. But in the meantime, we have no choice. We have to recognize that we have a union that is recognized. It must be allowed to talk and negotiate on behalf of the members of the full-time forces. We must just recognize that, and everything else we can do after. I do recognize that there are members of the reserve forces. Anytime you've got an emergency, you call them up. So you must have a regiment that looks after their interest and their safety. That I think we must come back and discuss. But make sure that we in no case confuse the reserve forces and the full-time forces. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think we can end on that note and say we'll then meet around November, December time, when you'll be ready to give us detailed information, including on how the two structures will coexist in the department. I assume by then you'd also be in a position to say, well, look, we have looked at the issues, but we thought that certain issues must be removed from the realm of the Defence Force Service Commission and referred to the Bargaining Council, because ordinarily that's where they belong, not in this forum anymore, but in the other forum. So I think all of that still have to be teased out as you are trying to discuss with the union, because it's now a reality. It's in place, and of course they will start to assert themselves and demand certain things. So you can't face the demand from the union and on the matter that the Defence Force Service Commission has recommended differently. So there will be a conflict immediately. You may as well and say, okay, let's deal with one body. On this item, let's deal with one body, and that body is Defence Force Service Commission, and or is the union in terms of what it ordinarily discusses at the Bargaining Council, so that you start to separate issues now, and so that you don't get trampled upon, as it were, as you move forward. I thought I should leave it at that, and you'll unentangled disentangle those matters, and then come back to us at a later stage. And Minister, I know you had wanted to be released immediately after this item, and I think the Secretary has made the same request. Hence, there was a request to reprioritize the items, and I must say you are free to leave at any time when you wish to. We will now move to the second item.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
You can say go, Chair.
Okay, good.
Chair.
English.
Chairperson.
We have closed this item. We are now moving to.
No, I just want to request from the minister. But if somebody want to request the minister, we are going to allow him.
No. I thought we closed this issue now.
No, we closed it, but I was having a request. That's why I want to give to the minister. When he comes next time, he must know about this. Or you are going to attend on.
Is it in relation to any of the items, Mr. Or it's a matter that you want to have a discussion with the minister about?
Yes, it's about the project that is run by the old man who's on the Brigadier Fazer, who's in the Kobatlala operation. Maybe the minister doesn't know about that. It's over 70 years, that brigadier.
I have a difficulty now. Can't you take the issue with the minister offline?
No, you see, it's not easy to talk to the minister offline because we are going to use the minister's phone. And when you talk to the minister on his own phone, you are going to give to each and everyone. I don't want that. That's why I just want to ask the minister about that. Because this man is an old man who's 70 years old. Is in operation in Kobatlana.
Okay, just come in on that issue briefly.
Yeah, I just want to say, Minister, because we are having an old people who Baba extending the contract, Like General Shoge, he left the Defense Force on 65 years. And this one now is 75 years. How these people, their contract, for these people, can the minister check on these people? Because they're so old, man.
Oh, so they've been retained by the department way beyond the age of retirement.
Yes.
I see. Okay. And at least you have cited the example. I think the minister.
Yeah, it's a brigadier.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, it's fine. The minister will take note, and of it, you will deal with it at some other point. Minister, I'm sure you've taken note of it.
I've taken note, Chair. I will come back on it.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Commander.
Thank you so much, Mr. Musomai. All right, colleagues, it's safe now to move off to the next item. The next item will be presented by the military ombuds, General Masondo. I don't know if there's going to be any input before Bamasondo, or Bamasondo will simply go into the presentation. All right. Okay. Over to General Masondo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense.
How much time do you need, Mhlanish?
Our presentation is long, but I'll try to go through it quickly.
Do you need 30 minutes? I saw it's 47 slides. 30 minutes? Or...
Yeah, okay, we'll try and do it in 30 minutes.
Okay, sure. Then we'll see, and then we may have to relax that. Okay, over to you, General.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Before I proceed with the presentation, can I just extend my greetings to the Honorable Minister, on whose behalf we're making this presentation, and also to the Deputy Minister of Defense. Chair, honorable members, we welcome the opportunity to come and account before the committee on the work we've been doing in the previous financial year, that is financial year 2021-2022. The aim of this presentation then is to brief the committee on the military Ombud annual activity report, as was tabled with Parliament. To do this, we'll cover the following broad topics: strategic overview. In terms of that, with your indulgence, Chair, I would just want to touch on the military Ombud priorities and skip other subtopics there, because priorities will give context in terms of the work that we've been doing in the current year. I mean, in the previous financial year. And therefore, we'll also broadly touch on performance, information, operations, governance, risk and compliance, and finally, corporate support. Chair, I then want to proceed to slide 7, where we're just re-emphasizing the priorities of the military ombud. First, effective and efficient resolution of complaints, the implementation of an integrated communication and marketing strategy plan, institutional independence, institutionalization of governance, risk and compliance framework, securing adequate funding for the compensation of employees, because this is one area we're very much challenged with as an office, resource management and operationalizing the ministerial policy directive on enterprise resource support to the military ombud. I'll then proceed, Chair, to slide 11, where we begin with the result-based model. And here we say the components as provided therein systematically add value to the Office of the Military Ombud when supported by well-defined and auditable performance information. In this regard, we are talking about impact, outcome, output, performance indicators, and targets, thereby providing for and enabling the measuring of what must be done and what has been achieved. Chair, I would like to briefly touch on our impact statement. As an office, we see ourselves having an impact on our complainants if we're able to resolve their complaints fairly economical and expeditiously in a manner that good administration and governance is ensured within the SANDF. As an office, Chair, we've got two strategic outcomes. The first one is fair, economical, and expeditious resolution of written complaints, and that is our core business. Our annual target in this regard is 73%, and I'm happy to report that we've exceeded that by 10%. We achieved 83%. Then the second one, accountable and effective governance of the Office of the Military Ombud. With that, there's no compromise. The target is 100%, and we actually have achieved that 100%. Coming to our operational plans, Chair, I'll just touch on those areas where we're not able to achieve our targets. The first one is a percentage investigation and resolution of complex complaints annually. Our target there is 70. We only achieve 59%. And the reason for this is the complexity of the complaints we're dealing with, and also the fact that some of those we received towards the end of the financial year. I will then also touch on the percentage compliance to communication plan. The annual target there is 100%. We only were able to attain 82.9%. The reason for this was the challenges that we're faced with respect to COVID-19. The next one is percentage requirements received versus requirements finalized within the Office of the Military Ombud, aligned to regulatory framework. There again, the target is 100%. We only attained 76%. And here is because we're having serious challenge in terms of support from the Department of Defense in the area of procurement, to the extent that in terms of my operational budget, I was only able to spend 40% of that, which is not an ideal situation at all. And finally, we look at the percentage compliance with implementation of the GRC framework. Well, the target there is 100%, but we really didn't perform well there. We achieved 47.5%. And the reason mainly is this is a reasonably new indicator. And besides that, we are not structured for this function within the office. Now I'd like to look at the historical overview in terms of the performance of the office, with the main focus on carryover cases, especially the backlog, because this is one area we've been focusing on, trying to clear the backlog and make sure that we're in a situation where we only deal with carryover cases from the previous financial year. And I'm happy then to report that at the end of the financial year, we are only able to carry over 58 cases. And I would like to then focus you, Chair and members, to the fact that at the beginning of the financial year, we had one case from the financial year 17-18. 11 from 18-19 financial year, 15 from 19-20. And I'm happy to report that all those cases were finalized, and we're now remaining with the cases from 2021 financial year and those from the previous financial year, the totality of which is 58%. Coming to the analysis of our performance, during the year under review, the office logged 8,192 physical contacts with the office. This comprises of people who attended outreach events organized by the Communication Directorate and attended to by operations personnel. It also includes walk-in inquiries, telephone inquiries, electronic inquiries, which includes email and posting on social media that required assistance from operational staff. You'll see from the bar chart there that in terms of outreach events, those were 7,849, walk-in inquiries 80, telephone inquiries 148, and electronic inquiries 115. Looking at the nature of complaints that we received, 227 of these were about the conditions of service, and 14 were about official conduct of members of the SANDF, and the 22 fell under what we call the other category as explained there. Further breaking down in terms of the complaints, in terms of our mandate, official conduct of members of the SANDF, we received in financial year 14 and carried over 6. In terms of the service condition, we received 227 and carried over 52. In terms of the other category, we're able to finalize all of them. Looking at these and breaking them down into service conditions, we'll see that the majority of these are about service termination, followed by service benefits. In terms of the profile of complainants, we received 36 complaints from members of the public, 85 from former members, and 142 from current members. Looking at these per rank level, we'll see that the majority are lodged by non-commissioned officers, 94, followed by other ranks. And of course, there are also senior officers that are lodging complaints, that is 38 of the senior officers, which is a worrying fact because senior officers must be looking after junior ranks. If they themselves are grieved, they won't be able to fulfill that role. Breaking down the complaints according to gender, we received 206 from male, 55 from female. 2, the gender was not disclosed in the complaint form. Further on, we look at the complaints per service division, and we can see that the majority of complaints come from the South African Army. The reason being South African Army is the biggest service. There's a bit of an anomaly. SAMS is the smallest service, but we are receiving a lot of complaints from them. And the reason for that is related to the OSD. And of course, currently that there's progress in terms of solving those problems. And hopefully from SAMS, this will be reduced. And of course, from members of the public, we received 37 complaints. Looking at the geographic spread of these, majority came from Gauteng, followed by Western Cape and KZN. We use this to also inform our outreach program, so that in those areas where we don't receive many complaints, we intensify our outreach program, not to solicit complaints, but rather to create awareness in those areas. Next, we look at the manner of finalization, and we can see that from that, 123 of these were declined because of jurisdiction and referred to the SANDF grievance system. Looking in the area of legal support, I want to confirm that the Directorate continues to provide effective and efficient legal services to the office. And of course, they're also dealing with litigation matters. And most of the application instituted by complainants in the High Court were either seeking orders against the Minister of Defense and military veterans for implementation of the military ombuds findings and recommendations, and applications to review and set aside the military ombuds findings and recommendations. In terms of the latter, I'm happy to say most of that we have won in courts. We continue to sign memoranda of understanding with the different stakeholders of the office as depicted there in the slide. We have an additional responsibility as an office where we were designated as part of the National Preventive Mechanism, as part of the OPCAT. And in terms of that, we've got to visit places of deprivation of liberty. And I want to report that in the current, or rather in the year under review, we're able to conduct inspection visit to the 2 military detention centers in October. And a report on these visits was submitted to the minister at the end of the financial year. In the area of communication, stakeholder collaboration has indeed bolstered the profile of the office in a positive way. The office aims to expand awareness of its mandate by augmenting an existing outreach program by proactively reaching out to members of the public. And in this slide, you see that of the planned 20 stakeholder engagements, only 16 were achieved, and as listed there, and the challenges we have already alluded to them. In terms of internal communication, this remains a priority in order to inform staff members of strategic matters as well as the decision taken. And of course, the platforms that we utilize are those as listed in the slide. In terms of external operation, as part of our external communication objective of reaching out to different stakeholders, the office has used the mainstream media and community media as a means to communicate its mandate and create awareness. We're cooperating with GCIS in this regard. And I'm happy also to report that for the first time as an office, we're able to hold a virtual military ombuds symposium on the 30th of September, which proved to be an overwhelming success. Of the planned 59 event management, of the planned 59 event management initiatives, including the outreach program, only 50, of which 48 were achieved. And of course, in the slides, we are showing the provinces that we went to, and also the units that were covered as part of that outreach program. Coming to the issue of brand and reputation management, of the planned 36 brand management initiative, only 33 were achieved, constituting 91% against the annual target of 100% compliance that is covered in the communication plan. In the area of international relation collaborations have consistently strengthened the profile of the office in a very positive way internationally. We are members of the International Ombud Institution, the African Ombuds and Mediators Association, and the Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance. And we actively take part in the activities of those institutions. I just need to point out that in terms of the DICA Foundation Council, we are representing South Africa on that council, and most of the meetings there were held virtually. But for the first time last year, the meeting was in attendance. I mean, was attended in person, and we were able to represent South Africa in terms of that. Next, I want to touch a bit on the African Footprint Project. This is a project that was conceived to try and share the best experience of the military ombud institution with our colleagues on the African continent, because currently we're the only military ombud institution on the continent. And because of the work that we've been trying to do, we're invited by DCAF to Kenya. In Kenya, they are also trying to establish a specialized ombud institution, and we were sharing our experience there. We're collaborating in this project with the University of Stellenbosch. In the area of research and development, as an office, following the stakeholder perception survey that we held with Sigler from Stellenbosch University, we then took forward some of the recommendations there and undertook a complainant satisfaction survey. And of course, the response that we got from that survey was quite satisfactory. But there were also areas where we were required to improve, and we're working on that. In the area of governance, risk, and compliance, I've indicated that we're not structured for this, but we're continuing in our efforts as an office to institutionalize GRC, and we're beginning to see the results in that respect. And of course, next are the office governance structures. And of course, also reflecting what we had planned and what we achieved. Next, I would like to discuss the issue of our risks. As an office, we identified 3 risks and response to those. The first one is the Military Ombud Act does not address the governance and accountability framework. And of course, we will address this by following up the legislative amendment or review. And the next is the issue of perception about the independence of the office. And we're addressing this through the outreach programs. And of course, the last and the most important is the shortfall on the compensation of employees, where we're not fully funded to cover remuneration of all the staff that of the office. We continue engaging with the SecDef in this regard. In the area of human resources, our priority was to staff the 63 posts as approved by the PDSC. However, we only managed to staff 6 of these. And the challenge there is the delays of the recruitment process, because on this we're dependent on external entities. And of course, in terms of that 63, therefore, we remain with 3 vacancies. Coming to compensation of employees, The office item 10 vote for the financial year 21-22 was 38.7 million, which represents 69% of our allocation. We had an over expenditure in this regard by 5.1 million. And of course, as an office, we've been working hard to also develop our staff, and we've been sending them on short courses, and the staff were sent on 67 courses that were identified to address certain skills gap. In the area of equity, we are struggling a bit. The Africans are overrepresented in the office. So as we continue with the staffing of vacant posts, we'll try and address this challenge. Finally, I want to touch on our financial performance and indicate that the office was allocated a total budget of 56.1 million. And of course, as indicated earlier, 38.7 was for compensation of employees, and 17.3 was our operational budget. And of course, we are very much concerned that in terms of our operational budget, we're only able to spend 40% of that because of the challenges that we are faced with in terms of the DoD procurement system. Thank you very much, Chair. That brings me to the end of the presentation. And we're ready to take questions.
Thank you very much, General, for your presentation. Colleagues, the issues on the table. We can now discuss. Let me take note hands first. It's Mr. Mare, and then any other member who wants to make a comment or ask a question. Please shout.
I've raised mine, Chair.
Thabo Mutle. Any other? Any other member? All right. So we have these two members, Mr. Mare and Mr. Mutle. So in that order, Mr. Mare.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to start off by just asking the military ombud. We know that in the past, part of the frustration was that they can only make recommendations and have no enforcement authority. We know that sometimes they have made recommendations, and even in cases where the minister has supported those recommendations, but when it is not implemented, they can do nothing about that. Is that not part of the concerns that maybe they have, but that we must have as well in terms of spending money on the military ombud? I also want to ask, when they're talking about finalization of cases and the percentage of the finalization of the cases, does that include only on their side, the finalization, or the completion of the complaints to the satisfaction of the complainant? In other words, what happens in cases where their recommendations are not implemented? Is that part of that finalization percentage? Because that will make quite a huge impact. Then I want to just address some of the basics that I believe. The three that is standing out for me is the percentage investigation and resolutions of complex complaints. In my opinion, that's one of the reasons why the military ombud, or the office of the military ombud, has been established. Not to look at the easy cases, but to look at the difficult cases, the complex cases. So the fact that only 59% means that they haven't earned their money this year. So where they have just now showed us where they have overspent on the cost of employees, then that is bad value for money. Because it means that, they haven't utilized that. The second one that is of a concern to me, compliance with the regulatory framework. That's part of the basics. That's PFMA. That's the the basics of any government department or any institution. If you don't comply with the regulatory framework, you are putting yourself at risk in terms of your sustainability and the justification. And then the last one, compliance with GRC. 47.5% is just totally unacceptable. That's bad value for money. And I've heard what the general has said about the complaints that it seems like they don't like that. Well, if you don't like that, you should not be in the job, because any department must fully comply with GRC. And no one can have any excuse that they don't like that. Because in his presentation, he's also referred to enterprise risks and cost of employees, and that is part of GRC. So if that is not complied with, then there's serious questions about that in terms of going forward. Because what the general must understand is that we sit with a budget that we know is by far not enough for the whole of the Defence Force. So if the Ombud is not going to contribute and help, then that just exacerbates the bigger problem, and that ends up by not complying with the constitutional requirements. Chairperson, at this stage, I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thabo Mutle, honorable member.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and good evening. Maybe unlike Honorable Murray on the complex cases, if the general can explain what are the challenges or the predicament that they are facing in terms of resolving those cases speedily in a manner that will be satisfactory. My second question is with regard to equity versus the number of posts that have been, what do they call it, approved. Because in one of the slides there, it states that vacant post under executive is 2 and under operational it's 26. What is their plan to close this gap? And this will go in line with slide, what slide is that? The one that deals with equity, where the ethnic group are not really balanced. How best are they intending to address that, taking into consideration that they've got about 28 or so vacant posts? I mean, for me, it's unacceptable that in the midst of the challenges that the country is facing, with the statistical result of high unemployment, an entity could sit with so many vacant posts without necessarily making efforts to ensure that this post are filled, and we contribute towards reducing that high percentage of unemployment. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, colleagues, may I now request the General to deal with to field the answers to the questions and maybe comment on other matters that the colleagues might have raised.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. We'll start with the question from Honorable Mare. The first question is about our recommendation and whether we've got the authority to enforce this. In terms of our acts, our recommendations are not binding. But as I've always said to the committee, for instance, the previous minister, although she knew that these are not binding, she would always, where she doesn't agree, instruct the department that they are taken to the High Court for review. And of course, through our involvement with these international bodies, we understood that it is not an ideal situation that our recommendations must be binding, because that creates a conflictual situation between the Ombuds institution and the entity that is being over which oversight is provided. It's better for the Ombud institution to be persuasive in terms of the quality of the work that it has done to ensure that its recommendations are implemented. Having said that, I want to indicate that it is a source of worry to the office that once the minister has accepted the recommendations, sometimes there's a problem within the SANDF to actually implement those. That is where we feel it is a problem and it needs to be addressed. The second question was on the issue of finalization of cases, whether this is to the satisfaction of the complainants, and also it covers implementation. From the point of view of the office, our work is finalized once we submit our recommendation to the office of the minister. But it must be understood that at every stage of the investigation, the complainant is kept informed where we are, and we have introduced a step that is not in the regulations that once we finalize the investigation and we come with a preliminary report that is provided to the chief of the SANDF and also to the complainant to look at. And if they feel that the issues that we overlooked in our investigation, they can then make representation. And if those representations are valid, then we take them into account and finalize our report. The Honorable Mare is concerned about the fact that with complex cases, we only achieved 59%. And concludes that because of that, we have not performed our work as an office. I want to remind the committee that we come from a situation where, first and foremost, the overall performance of the office was low, not only on the complex cases, but on all the cases. And we have improved a lot. But the reason why we achieved this 59% is because we're dependent on the different stakeholders to provide us with the kind of information for us to continue with the investigations. And if they don't provide us that information timeously and is adequate information, it is not possible to actually finalize these cases speedily. And of course, I've reported to the committee that we have established different fora. First, we've got a forum. I've got a forum with the chief of the SANDF, where we look at the complications around receiving responses on time, and also with the chiefs of the services. And the situation has improved tremendously for us to be standing at 59% as we speak. Issue of compliance with regulatory framework, I think I've said it as I was presenting, is a non-negotiable issue from our side. In our work, we always strive to comply with the regulatory framework. In the area of GRC, I've indicated that we are not structured for that function. We're doing it as over and above task. But I've also taken a step because the office since its establishment was never audited. But to ensure that there's compliance, we've invited internal audit to come to the office to audit us. And of course, they found certain anomalies. We're working on that. We're continuously ensuring that we strengthen the control measures within the office so that we can comply. We can be fully compliant in terms of the GRC. Coming to the questions by Honorable Mutle, I've partly touched on the issue of complex cases and what creates the complexity around this. The real issue here is us getting the information that we require timeously. And in some of the cases, particularly cases around issues of pension payouts and things like that, you find that there are conflicts within members of the families. And because of that, and they cannot find one another, then it creates the problem for us to finalize the investigation and be able to make the necessary recommendation. Honorable Mutle, in terms of the posts, we said the office was established with 89 approved posts. However, since the establishment of the office, we have never been able to actually fill those posts up. A cap was placed. At the most, we can only staff 63 posts. And of course, that's what we've been always trying to do. And of course, when there are vacancies, then we use those vacancies to try and close the gaps that we have in terms of equity within the office, because we take the issue of equity serious, because this is a government policy and we want to actually comply with it. Honorable Chair, I'm not sure whether maybe there's an area that I didn't address, and if there is, I'm ready to actually come back and address it. Thank you, Chair.
I think you've covered all the issues, but the colleagues will indicate if they... Yes, I can see. Okay, I'll come back to Mr. Ryder. Thabo, you still want to come back?
Yeah, it's just a follow-up. Out of the 63 that the general is indicating that
can you start your video on? I'm told that this thing is live on 1 or 2 channels.
Why do I switch it off? I'm in the dark, however.
Oh, I see. No, it doesn't help. Okay, go ahead.
All right. No, I was just making a follow-up. Out of the 63 that the general has indicated, is the 63 the number of employees that they have currently, or do they have vacancies, or how many posts are filled out of the 63? Thank you very much.
Okay, Thabo, thank you so much. Mr. Reda?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm sorry, I might be coming in at the tail end. I apologize, but just thinking further about the discussion that we've just had before this presentation, and then considering the presentation that we've received on slide 18, it is, where the majority of the complaints that the Ombudsman is dealing with are related to service conditions. So I'd just like the General to tell me that it would be my assumption that perhaps a member of the Defence Force could then lay a complaint with the Defence Force Service Commission about service conditions. If they didn't receive a satisfactory answer, they could then go to the Military Ombudsman and lay the same complaint there. And if they don't receive a satisfactory answer, they could then go to the union and lay the same complaint there. So there seems to be a massive overlap, and perhaps even a covering of each other's areas, which would not be efficient and would just lead to the dragging out of disputes a very long way. So has this happened? Does this sort of thing happen? And is there potential for this to happen? If so, I think that perhaps, Chair, there is a deeper question that needs to be asked about the existence of the three bodies all simultaneously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Any other questions, colleagues? Any other question? All right. In the absence of any other hand, General, you have given us your caseload in 21-22 financial year, and your achievements against that caseload, the percentage that you have been able to achieve. But you are not telling us how many of those cases that you have finalized were in fact implemented by the minister. In terms of Section 8 of the Act, you, wait a minute, you propose, okay. Now is it Section 8? No, is 6668. What section is this? What section is this? Where it says that you propose an alternative, you recommend an alternative relief to the minister. It says if the Ombud upholds the complaint, the Ombud must recommend the appropriate relief for implementation to the minister. Now, we are not getting a sense of the extent to which your recommendations have been implemented by the minister. It may be that your team does well. It finalizes all the cases, and but the problem is after you have recommended an appropriate relief, nothing is being done. And so you did express a concern, but we are not getting a sense of how many have not been cases have not been implemented. That's one. And two, General, I think I did mention this previously, that there are instances whereby a person has been to you and you recommended an appropriate relief. When that appropriate relief was not implemented, the complainant goes to court and he cites in court that you had granted an appropriate relief and the minister did not implement it, or the department did not implement it. Hence, you are now is now bringing the matter before the court, and the court still awards in his favor. But those cases I'm referring to, after having gone through all the stages, they still come back to the department, and the department says, no, yes, the complaint was upheld by the military ombuds. 2, the court ruled in your favor, but we're still not going to implement the relief. So we want to know how many of such cases that have come to your knowledge, where the court, the department or simply said, no, we're not going to implement, even though you now come back with a court decision, we're not going to implement the recommended relief as suggested by, or the recommended relief from the military ombuds. So that we get a sense of the extent to which the leadership of the military is prepared to cooperate with you, and we'll find that in the manner in which they embrace the decisions that you hand down or the recommendations to make. So I don't get that sense. Maybe you want to comment on that, General. Thanks. In the absence of any other hand, I invite you to comment.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. In terms of the follow-up question from Honorable Mute, in terms of how many of the 63 posts are currently vacant. Currently, 3 posts that are vacant, and they are in our operational environment. Coming to the question by Honorable Ryder about the issue of us, the Service Commission, and maybe the unions dealing with issues of service conditions. Unfortunately, I cannot give a clear answer to that, except to say, in terms of our act, our institution was created to deal with complaints from members and former members about their service condition. But we can only entertain complaints at a point where a member has first exhausted the internal grievance processes. Because if he then is not happy with that, then he's able to come to us. But I think then it's the decision of the individual, whether he comes to us with their complaint or to the Defense Force Service Commission or to the union. That I think is just purely dependent on the member himself.
But I don't think you're doing justice to that aspect, General. I think the question says, there are now 3 forums that the member can approach. It's remember, you were established, I think, before the other, I think it was, you were established after the Defense Force Service Commission was established, because I think it was 2010, the Defense Force Service Commission, 2012 or 2013 was yourself, the military ombuds, and you now have a bargaining council. And in terms of the bargaining council, if you don't win in the labor forums, you can even go to a labor court and then a Supreme Court of Appeal or Labor Appeals Court. Now, he says, given now the change of situation within the department where we now have a union and there will be these forums and on the shop floor. Would you still entertain these matters? I think maybe just approach it from that angle. Or you can simply refer them to the appropriate bodies. I think the law allows you to refer matters to appropriate authorities.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'll maybe attempt again and then also give to my legal. Chair, my understanding, the Defense Service Commission was established to deal with the conditions of service of members of the defense on a proactive basis, you know, where they will assess what are the conditions like, and then look at the areas where this could be improved. And of course, they will be made aware, maybe also about shortcomings by way of complaints that they would receive. Whereas our office simply deals with their complaints. For instance, we currently don't have own initiative power to go and investigate whether members of the defense force are adequately provided for in terms of their service condition, but only react when they lodge complaints with the office. And of course, as CHR said, the union has grown in numbers because they are able to take some of these complaints to courts and win and enforce implementation, something that as an office we don't have. But Chair, let me also give an opportunity to the legal member, Director Legal, to assist me in this way.
Thank you so much, Director Legal.
Thanks, thanks, General. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I
okay.
can.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I think that what the General has just highlighted is that there are two distinct mandates between the Defence Force Service Commission and the Military Ombud. So the Defence Force Service Commission is tasked with determining conditions of service for the force as a whole, whereas this office, the Military Ombud, is tasked with investigating complaints relating to conditions of service of an individual member. So we deal basically with investigations and not necessarily policy decisions relating to conditions of service, which is what the Defence Force Service Commission does. So with regards to our complaints, it's basically individual grievances. That is why sometimes you would see that we are seen as an extension of the grievance system. So we will deal with individual complaints that emanates from the grievance system and comes to this office, even though it relates to a condition of service as defined in terms of the Act. Now, whether or not a member decides to approach the Military Ombud first or approach the union, we have no control over that. It would be in the member's best interest to come to this office because there is a specific purpose for which we were created. But we do find that members, like we've been discussing this evening, would choose to approach their unions and then go to the High Court. But what we have been encouraging through our awareness processes is that to avoid litigation for both the department and for the members themselves, it would be in their best interest to come to the Military Ombud. But like I said, we have no control over that. So there are definitely two distinct mandates, though, between the Commission and the Military Ombud, as we've just explained. I hope that clarifies it, Chair.
Okay, no, thank you so much. You may continue, General. My apologies. General, I can't hear you now. Is there a problem?
Sorry, I had my mic off. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Honorable Chair?
Yes.
Yes. Chair, you alluded to the fact that we reported on the cases that we finalized in the financial year under review. And then you wanted to know how many of those have been implemented by the minister. I'm afraid, Chair, we finalized many reports and made recommendations, but there's been some gap. Of late, we're not receiving confirmation whether the minister is actually accepting this or not. So we really don't, we don't know where we stand with most of the reports that we've finalized lately. And Chair, also you alluded to the fact that if the Ombud uphold the complaint and make a recommendation for appropriate relief, and when this is not actually implemented, members then approach the court, and the courts then sometimes hand down judgment that the recommendation of the Ombud must actually be implemented. I want the Director of Operations just to assist me if he's got the figures with him, offhand, if he can just indicate how many of the cases we're talking about.
Yeah, because I understand you'll also be cited in the court papers.
Yes, will be cited, Chair.
All right. Director Bigger, who's giving us information?
It's Mr. Jonas, Director Investigations.
Director Investigation, Mr. Jonas.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the committee. Unfortunately, at this stage, we could not be in a position to provide this information to you. However, it can actually be solicited so that it can be provided at a later stage. But what I can actually put across to the committee is that most of the recommendations are continuously implemented, and that these are actually engaged within our liaison forum to ensure that this is done as a next step in the process. Thank you, Chair.
I did not hear you.
Oh, sorry, Chair, can I also hand over?
Thank you, Chair. I think in as far as the court decisions are concerned, we are currently not aware of any such case where the court has made an order finding in favor of complainants who are looking for implementation orders or orders to compel the minister to implement. And a situation where the department has indicated that they would not comply with such an order. What we are aware of, though, is that there are cases where implementation orders are still, courts have made a decision in a specific matter where they have not found in favor of the complainant. In other words, they have set aside the decision of the military ombud and found in favor of the department. So we do have a case where the complainant, which is now an applicant in the High Court, who has been compelled to take that decision on appeal to the, or is currently making an application to appeal that decision of the High Court. So I think that is the challenge that we are facing currently, is where you have a situation where the military ombud's findings is not being endorsed, so to speak, by a court of law, and you have the applicant having to appeal that decision based on the findings of the High Court. But we are not currently faced with a situation where the department refuses to implement an order of court that is made in favor of an applicant. And if it does so, then it would definitely be a contempt of court order that would be made against the department itself.
Okay, it's fine. Thank you very much. Are you done, General?
Yes, I wanted to just end up by pointing out that since we established a monthly forum between myself and the chief of the SANDF, the number of recommendations that are not implemented is reducing, because through that forum we're able to discuss this and come to some solutions to get those recommendations implemented. Thank you very much.
But in instances where you don't get any feedback, whether your recommendations have been accepted or not, like you are saying lately, that is what you are experiencing. And you can't, that would be an impediment towards dealing with those issues at that platform that you are talking about, that liaison platform.
Definitely it will be. I think perhaps the challenge, it looks like in the office of the minister, a legal advisor has not been appointed to assist the minister with this recommendation. But we're not getting any feedback in terms of the reports that we finalized.
I read frustration on your face. Okay. Okay, so we will take it up with the minister at the right time. All right, colleagues, are there any issues that you feel have not been adequately covered by the military ombud? All right. It doesn't look like there's, colleagues, there's any other hand. You seem to have covered all the issues, General. No, thank you very much. We'll certainly follow up on the matters that we said we'll follow up on. I think your team is doing very well. You have really improved performance from the previous years. In even the cases that you've given us, the age analysis of the cases you are dealing with, and you've really dealt with the backlog. It's only cases from the previous financial year that were carried into the new financial year. But all other cases prior to that year were basically cleared. We are excited about that, the Ombuds, it's really clearing all the backlog and is trying to be up to date with all the cases. And the amount of cases that you have been able to finalize in this financial year, I think we're happy. I can see value for money in the manner that you are dealing with the issues. But the point again remains that the decision of the court in the matter, where it says your decisions are nothing but mere recommendations. And so if your decision can be ignored, then it consent to us because it weakens the authority of the military ombud. We were always under the impression that your decision or recommendations stand until implemented. If not implemented, reviewed and set aside by the court. And if that has not happened, if they have not been reviewed or set aside by the court, they remain there to be implemented. But that's a reason why we are keen to receive a report on the extent to which your matters have been implemented, because it do not help to work hard in terms of finalizing the cases. What we want to see is justice being dispensed. Justice is, so in other words, we'll only get that sense if the value chain has been completed, the decision has been implemented, given effect to this way or that way. Was there justice or there is no justice? So we would love at some point to meet with you where you take us through now, this time, the issues that have in fact been implemented, and in instances where they have not been implemented and you have been advised why they've not been implemented. You would expect that you share that with us, so that we are in the loop as to the quality of the recommendations you are giving to the department. So we want to rest it at that for now and say thank you very much to yourself and to the team that you work with. And until we meet again at some other time, obviously it will be next year. It looks as though our program will be very tight this year. And I'm not too sure if it is the first time that I see your report on 80 seat in Parliament. In the past, I don't know, but this time it was 80 seat. It was given to the minister, and 80 seat in Parliament is in the records, is on the records of Parliament. With that, thank you very much, General and the team. You are free to exit the platform at any time you wish to. General?
Thank you very much, Chair. My staff are at the point of asking overtime allowance from me, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
That's a complaint that you must deal with, General. So, thank you so much, General. Thank you. Colleagues, we are now at this point where we should deal with the minutes. I don't know if we still have minutes. What set of minutes do we have? How many sets, Nandipa?
We've got 2, Chair.
I've got 2. Can we beam the first one? All right. So this is the first set of the minutes, 19th May 2022. So this is the attendance register. Please note if there are any questions or corrections, please advise. All right, complete the attendance register. And then this is the second page. We're checking for corrections. This is the third page, checking for corrections. And move to the fourth page. Checking for corrections. And we move to the fifth page. Checking for corrections, and then you go to the last page. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I present the minutes for adoption. Is there no objection? If none, please indicate by moving and seconding the minutes.
I move, Chair.
And Mr. Motsomai moves. Any seconder?
I will second, sir.
Mr. Mare seconds. Thank you very much. The minutes are adopted, duly adopted. Let's deal with the second set. Minutes of the 26th of May. It was the presentation on this succession plan by the various aspects. This was the delegation or the attendance. Go to say second page. And this was an interesting discussion. And second page, let's go to the next page. Third page. And then fourth page. And then the last page. All right. Colleagues, I present the minutes of that workshop or discussion with the experts. If there is any objection to accepting them, please indicate that by moving and seconding.
Honorable Chair.
Lekwase moves for it.
Lekwase moves and the Tabo.
I'll second to the Chair.
All right, so the minutes are then duly adopted. Colleagues, thank you very much. Is there any other item, Nandipa? Yes, Mr. Mara. Sorry, Mr. Reiter. Sorry, Mr. Reiter.
Thank you, Chair. Just before we close, I just wanted to report back on my experience from Sunday's event with the United Nations Peacekeeping Memorial. And just to say a word of thanks to Nandipa, especially, and to Gunter for the arrangements in the background. And I thought it went well. And to my colleagues, Mr. Mutle and Mr. Matsamaya, I enjoyed your company, and thank you for making it pleasant for me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And Tabo, you want to say something? I thought the arrangement whereby we go utilizing our own entitlements short-circuited the whole process and made it much easier. And because it was at less cost, and we made them not to say no to our request. Maybe that should be our approach going forward, where it is possible. I mean, in other parts of the areas, we can move in, we can fly in and fly out, which would not, see us having to pay for accommodation. And you see, so that, in my view, should be in that way would be mobile. Colleagues, Tabo, do you want to make any comment? I saw you there with. I was completely uncomfortable. It was just yourself alone and there was Motsomai on the left and Mr. Rader on the right.
Bodyguards.
That's what we need, sir.
Yeah.
That is what we need.
No, it's fine. The deputy minister was in front of them.
Oh,
so I was very safe.
Oh, you were safe. Okay.
Yeah, no. Chair, I think the proposal it's acceptable. We can do that because under the COVID and the arrangement of Parliament currently, we are underutilizing our domestic tickets. Therefore, they can be put into use to advance the work of the committee. I have no problem with that.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Chair, there's just two other issues that we wanted to cover. Just briefly, Chair, that was the draft program for the third term, as well as the options for a study tour. It will be very brief, Chair, because this is the last meeting of the joint for this quarter, Chair.
No. So this is the last meeting of the quarter.
Of this, the second quarter, Chair.
I can only take the item of the first day of or when you come back. I don't want to present the program at this stage. You only shared it this morning, Peter. I've not been able to apply my mind on it.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Can I maybe then just...
Peter?
Sorry, Chair.
Come again?
Yeah. Can I maybe then just briefly flight the possible options for a study tour, given that we need some time to prepare for this, Chair?
Yes, no, possible. Okay, I can take that. But as to the items, at least for the first meeting of the first quarter, I will do a round robin. I will circulate it to honorable members. I must really say that I only saw the suggestions this morning. We can deal with the study tour.
Thank you, Chair. What we've discussed at our strategic workshop last year, Chair, we said that we should maybe consider an oversight visit to the Democratic Republic of Congo, like the committee has done 25 to 29 March 2018. And given that our soldiers are now also deployed in Mozambique, the suggestion is that we should maybe apply now already and liaise with the department to assist us, because last time they also helped us with the travel arrangement. So if we can for now start engaging with them so that they can have a response. So if it's then not possible to have this oversight visit in the first week of December, then we can maybe consider the other two options. The second option, Chair, is with regards to military veterans. And in 2006, the Joint Standing Committee on Defense conducted an oversight visit to Algeria. They and Vietnam, they are very well known for how they actually look after their military veterans. So the suggestion is that we conduct a study tour to Algeria and Vietnam, and just to have a look at the different benefits and how they honor their war veterans. The third option, Chair, is something that we discussed at our strategic workshop, and that relates to the force structure and force design. And there the suggestion is we might, for instance, go and visit the European country, and on our way back, we can also visit the country, a relevant country on the continent. And then we can also engage them, for instance, around issues related to career management, succession planning, exit mechanism, and force rejuvenation. That would be my input, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Colleagues, these are the three options presented. Number one, number two, number three. I like number three, but let's discuss it.
Chairperson?
Yes, sir.
If I may.
Yes.
Obviously, I agree with you that the third one seems to be one where we can get a lot of value for money from that. And that is something that we should, I think, pursue. However, the first option, I know I've been privileged to be on that oversight visit to the DRC. And I know how much that has meant for not only for me to understand the circumstances of what was going on there, but how much it meant for the Defence Force and how much the information we got out of that. And I think that was empowering for us, for Parliament, but most certainly for the members of the Defence Force who served there. And I think afterwards, with our engagements with the chief and the structures and joint operations, the chief and the others. So yes, I agree with you that those two are standing out for me. And I think, depending on the cost of the different ones, because I know that with that first one, the department will assist us in terms of transport, which they've done last time. And it was very, very, very efficient and very, very effective. But I agree with you with that number three as well.
How many days you spent in the DRC?
Peter, can you remember? I think it was about 5 days, if I can remember correctly, because we first went to Kinshasa, to the UN MONUSCO head office, and then we went to Goma, and I think we were about 2-3 nights in Goma, and then we also traveled up north to Beni and even to North Kivu, where our soldiers were stationed.
I see. Okay. All right. Mr. Reda, I can see your hand. Not your hand. I can see you on the screen. You've somehow, yeah. Okay. Yourself, I take you. Motapo. Okay. Motapo after you, Mr. Reda.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Chair, yes, I think I agree that the priority should be number 1 and 3, and I specifically want to draw attention again to our mandate, and suggest that perhaps the military veterans oversight would be better placed in the portfolio committee rather than the joint standing committee. I'm not sure that really is our mandate specifically, and I know it's a point of contention at this stage. But from that point of view, I certainly think that number 1 and 3 would be the biggest focus. And of course, I do think that the discussions that we've had formally in this committee, but also informally, indicate that force structure and force design is going to be a pressing issue that needs to be discussed going forward. And certainly, I think that in our discussions with the uniformed members on Sunday, it's foremost on their minds as well, the fact that they are concerned about force structure and design. And if I can maybe just expound a little bit on what was discussed, was the fact that, you know, if we have a look at the Ukraine, for example, and their level of preparedness for defense situation, it far outstrips our preparedness at this stage. And noting the regional issues that we are experiencing on our continent, you know, perhaps we need to reevaluate our current situation. So yeah, I do think that number 3 would be a big issue for me, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Motapo. Thanks, Mr. Reda. Ms. Motapo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman and colleagues. Thank you for this presentation of 3 options. However, Chairperson, I've got some reservations. I'll propose that this not be conclusive. We allow you, Chairperson, Whip, and your team, the management committee, to also look at various options. And then maybe those options and this one, then you apply as a team, your mind fully to this. Like the 3rd one, let me give an example of the 3rd one, an European country. You know, most European countries are so advanced and we are a developing country. And then can we find a country similar to us in all respects in terms of military operations and related issues so that when whatever team, be it management committee or this joint committee, apply its mind, is informed by all these options. So my take is that let us not finalize, take a resolution based only on these 3 options. Let's allow the management committee, being yourself, the whip, and your team, to look at others before we take a resolution. That's my humble submission, Chairperson. Thank you.
So, but okay, now I see in other words, even before we identify the country, we must look at you know, the benefit to the committee, because if we go to a country that is far advanced,
what are we going to?
It will serve only to admire but it's something we can't import into our country. Oh no, we'll look at that, and so in other words, we'll look at where we are going. But force design, force structure, and force design looks appealing to most members. You see, I also want to add, visiting a country which has strong defense industries as us as well. In other words, it's carrier management, succession planning, exit mechanism, force rejuvenation, and then have something on force or not on the defense industry. We were told that we're number 10 in the world. I can't remember the number 1 to number 9. I think we could also benefit a lot in how they manage, the issues of trade, as it were. But we'll look at that when we deal with it. Okay, colleagues, let's go look at the countries and we'll present them when we
Chair, my hand is up.
Mr. Matsomai, my apologies.
Okay. I'll follow Honorable Motsamai, Chair.
Oh, okay, Tabo, you'll come after him.
I've got the problem of this thing of light here. Chairperson, I was just want to say to go to DRC, and people from DRC, they are coming to South Africa, and we want to go and see how the military veterans are living. Why can't we go to Cuba, place like Cuba, place like Jamaica, or a place like Brazil, so that we can go and see? Because you must understand, this committee of us is one of the biggest committee in the parliament. We cannot undermining us.
Okay.
Because the people from that side, or in Zimbabwe, when you go to Zimbabwe, people from Zimbabwe, they want to come and learn from us. So we want to go and learn from the people who want to learn from us. Why can't we go to this Jamaica, Cuba? I think there we will be doing something so that we can assist our military veterans here. They need a lot of employment. Maybe we'll get something that if you do this, military veterans are doing this, we will benefit as a country from what we get from that side. I think you check.
Okay, so you're saying if we consider aspects on military veterans, those are the countries we must target. Okay, you have mentioned them. I'm not going to repeat the names. Tabo?
All right, thank you very much. I think we are not, our members are not far apart from each other. But the emphasis, the underlying fact is that we can conclude on this. Therefore, let's maybe you will check if we are meeting next week. Let's look at all those various options and see which one will be best, will best suit the Joint Standing Committee to pursue. Because it's a study tour, and what becomes important is what is it that we want to learn, and how are we going to utilize that knowledge to actually ensure that before our term comes to an end, we have contributed that, infused that knowledge into the Defense Force or either the Military Veterans Department to make it better so that they improve in terms of how they operate and deliver services. Because I don't think it's for us to have that knowledge and not do anything with it. So it's important. I want to agree with colleagues who are saying let's not go to most advanced because the knowledge we might come back with might not be applicable to our situation. Therefore, let's look at something that will easily relate to, and whatever we learn there can easily be applicable to our situation. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay. No. I think the input assisting. Please, Peter, just look at, reflect on this input, and that when you have reflected and you have concrete proposals, then you can then share them with the committee members. But it looks as though number 3 is popular, but if we can mix number 1 and number 3, all the better. Number 2 is an issue that we must look at some other time. But if we can combine it, if the trip can have all 3 elements, minus Mozambique. If the trip can have all 3 elements, nobody spoke on Mozambique, then we would be happy, but I doubt we can accommodate all 3. But you've heard what colleagues have had to say on these issues. Please just reflect on them and then update your presentation. Peter?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Will do.
Will do. Okay. Colleagues, thank you very much for your contribution tonight.
You're muted, Chair.
You're muted, Chair. You're muted.
You are not audible.
No, thanks. Oh, no, thanks. Peter, you heard me that you will update the thing and come back.
Yes, Chair, got that. Thank
Okay,
you.
that's fine. Colleagues, all what remains for me is to thank all of you. I can't detain you beyond this. Colleagues, thank you very much. I hope there's no objection to adjourning the meeting.
Thank you, Chair, and good night.
And good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, Slav.
Thank you. Good night.
Nkuyu. Yeah.